Hello, my name is Alexander Lawstein. I'm the Museum Learning Manager here at the Maryland Historical Society. We are in the H. Furlong Baldwin Library, where he has around 7 million documents, some of which will be highlighted in this video. This video will explore the history of housing discrimination in Baltimore City, particularly towards Black Baltimoreans. In 1937, the Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation published its residential security map of Baltimore. This map, geared towards mortgage lenders, graded the potential lending risk factors and desirability of neighborhoods in Baltimore and many other cities throughout the United States. While initially part of the New Deal's National Housing Act of 1934, intended to help prevent foreclosures, these maps soon became a symbol of race-based housing discrimination. Areas in green or Grade A areas were the most desirable. Blue or Grade B were next, then yellow or Grade C, and finally, the least desirable, most risky areas were the red or Grade D neighborhoods. White neighborhoods tended to fall within green and blue grades, immigrant neighborhoods were blue and yellow, while black neighborhoods tended to be redlined. This redlining in 1937 was not new to Baltimoreans, as it was the result of decades of housing discrimination. Following the Civil War and through the early 1900s, white Baltimoreans used housing ordinances, homeowners associations, and block busing to segregate and discriminate against black Baltimoreans. Before the Civil War, Baltimore was fairly mixed with white and black residents living amongst each other, although white residents tended to live on main streets and black residents tended to live in the alleyways. Following the Civil War, an increase in black and European immigration to Baltimore, coupled with new public transportation options and the Great Baltimore Fire of 1904, began to lead to white middle-class flight. As white Baltimoreans began to leave the inner city, followed by ethnic groups such as Jewish immigrants, there was no official housing segregation policy stopping upper and middle-class black families from following the same trajectory. Nevertheless, most realtors would not sell to black families. If a house was going to be sold to a black family, it would have to be done by the owner themselves. This is what happened in 1910 with the purchase of 1834 McCullough Street by W. Ashby Hawkins, a prominent black attorney. This sale and subsequent rental to his law partner, George McMecken, began a series of official and unofficial housing segregation policies in Baltimore City. Unofficially, this sale began a pattern of selling in which white Baltimoreans would sell to Jewish homebuyers who would then, and only if their neighborhood or block's market was in a slump, would sell to black families. This pattern of secession primarily took place in the Old West Baltimore neighborhoods of Upton and Druid Heights. This block breaking, or busting as it was sometimes called, scared many white homeowners and city government officials. One of the first official policies was Baltimore City Ordinance 610, also called the West Plan, named after Councilman Samuel West. This ordinance stated that no black resident could move into a block in which more than half of the residents were white and vice versa. It also stated that existing conditions would not be disturbed and no one would be forced to move out of their neighborhood. This ordinance was the first of three, but had the largest impact as many southern cities began to replicate the Baltimore idea. The Baltimore idea led to crowded black neighborhoods in Baltimore City. It wasn't just housing ordinances that stopped black Baltimoreans from leaving the city, but also homeowners associations. As upper and middle-class white families began to leave the city, the Roland Park Company developed neighborhoods for these families. Before buying a home, a family had to agree to a set of rules, also called a neighborhood covenant. One of these rules, in a 1913 agreement for the Guilford neighborhood, under the nuisance section, stated that at no time shall the land included in said tract, or any part thereof, or any building erected thereon, be occupied by any Negro or person of Negro extraction. This segregation from private neighborhoods began even before the West Plan was implemented, and in response to the creation and segregation of these private neighborhoods, specifically the Roland Park neighborhood, construction and realty companies began developing neighborhoods for middle-class black Baltimoreans. One specific neighborhood was Cherry Heights neighborhood, represented legally by Hawkins and McMecken, which was touted as having lots as beautiful as Roland Park. Although the Baltimore idea was found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 1917 in Buchanan v. Worley, in which they argued that civil government racial segregation in housing violated the 14th Amendment, the damage caused by Ordinance 610 and the private HOAs was seen in the 1937 residential security map. Black neighborhoods in Baltimore suffered from high rents and poor quality housing due to blockbusting and deceptive practices that came with the industry and limited social and city services, which led to Grade D or red markings. The effects of housing discrimination in Baltimore in the 1910s to 1930s can still be seen in residential maps of Baltimore today. Many of the neighborhoods where people of color live in Baltimore today are the same neighborhoods that they were forced to live in due to housing discrimination ordinances and redlining in the 1910s to the 30s. Over these 30 years, the consistent housing discrimination and unethical practices by renters limited the ability of many in the Black community to accumulate wealth, while at the same time stigmatizing neighborhoods, decreasing the number of social programs, limiting access to public works, and heightening the police presence in neighborhoods deemed undesirable. Although the 1968 Fair Housing Act outlawed discrimination of this type, the legacy and continued unequal treatment still affects Black communities today.